Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, testing.
Hello. Good evening. Today is Tuesday, March 19th, 2024, and the time is 6 p.m. I call to order the regular meeting of the following will come to order. The Victorville City Council and the same council sitting as the Victorville Library Board of Trustees, the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency, the city as a housing asset successor, Joint Powers Finance Authority, and the Victorville Water District. I would like to call this meeting to order in honor of Brian Gangler. Tonight, we are holding our city council meeting in honor of our former city engineer, Brian Gangler. Sadly, Brian died this Saturday after a short battle with cancer. Brian was a tremendous part of our success, and he had a huge impact on the city of Victorville. He oversaw major infrastructure projects like the Green Tree Extension, the Bear Valley Road widening, and as well as the La Mesa and Esquali interchange and more. Brian served the city of Victorville for 22 years, and 11 of those years as our city engineer. We appreciate Brian's services to our great city, but more importantly, appreciate the man Brian was. Brian was genuine, kind, and a fun sense of humor. He was a great friend and a terrific husband and father. We will miss him. I worked with Brian most of his years here, and Brian had a patience for me that not too many people did. He explained things and made sure we all understood what was going on. So this meeting is in memory of him. Madam Clerk, will you kindly call the roll?
Councilmember Gomez.
Present.
Councilmember Irving.
Present.
Councilmember Jones.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
Here.
Mayor Becerra.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you very much. The invocation tonight will be led by Elder Chevy Bass from the Burning Bush. Is he? Come on up. And our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Captain Wickham. Would you please stand?
Good evening. Let us pray. Father, in the name of Jesus, I come before you tonight. Lord, I want to just thank you for the privilege of us all being able to assemble in this public meeting. I want to lift up Brian and his family and in the passing of him, Father. We thank you for his service and all that he meant to so many. Comfort his family in this time, Father. Thank you for life, liberty, and the freedom to participate in this meeting. We thank you for the governing authorities who promote peace, order, and justice. And we pray for our mayor and the authorities established and the city officials and the various levels of those who operate within this city to keep order. We thank you for them, Lord. We pray for the agenda that is set before them on this evening. We pray for clarity. We pray for wisdom and the insight to make the decisions that is best for this great city in which we live. We ask that you do all things decently and in order and keep watch over this great city in which we live. I ask these in all my prayers. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen.
Please face the flag and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. We're now going to move on a presentation of awards for the Green Tree Extension. In January, we learned the American Public Works Association of Southern California named the Green Tree Extension its best transportation project of the year. I'm very happy to report that we have received 2 more awards for our Green Tree Extension. Thanks, Brian. These awards underscore the hard work and dedication of our city team, particularly our engineering department. Kudos to the entire team for their outstanding efforts. Now I invite our current city engineer, Freddie Bonilla, to tell us about the new awards.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council.
As the council is very well aware, we are very proud of our Green Tree Extension project. It was first envisioned in the 1970s. Project was added to our general plan in 1988, and it became a viable project in 2008 when we, along with our member agencies, SBCTA, the town of Apple Valley, and San Bernardino County, received federal funding for the project. So the project's highlights include a 600-long bridge that travels over the BNSF railroad tracks, making it the city's longest bridge. New traffic signals, widening of nearby roads and intersections, as well as the addition of turn lanes, were installed throughout the length of the project, creating an extensive 7-mile bikeway loop. And additionally, it connected Victorville with our neighboring city or town of Apple Valley. And in total, it was a $47 million project. The Green Tree Extension project has benefited the entire Victor Valley by providing a third much-needed east-west corridor over the BNSF tracks. This alleviated traffic on Highway 18, as well as Bear Valley Road. I would like to thank our vendors, Docket Engineering, Skanska, and Parsons, who assisted us with the design, construction, and construction management of the project. I am truly blessed to bring you these awards. But if I'm being honest with myself and with everybody here, all the credit deservedly goes to our former city engineer, Mr. Brian Gangler. I will repeat myself. I am truly blessed to bring you these awards, but all the credit goes to Brian. Thank you, Brian. I want to talk a little bit about the awards. The American Public Works Association is a professional association of public works agencies, private companies, and individuals dedicated to promoting professional excellence and public awareness. In January, we received the 2023 Project of the Year in the Best category from the entire Southern California chapter. BEST stands for Building Excellence Shaping Tomorrow. The Southern California chapter includes the Greater Los Angeles area, the Inland Empire, the Coachella Valley branch, and the High Desert branch. Today, I am proud to bring back to you that the APWA award for the Project of the Year in the High Desert region is, once again, Green Tree Extension. Additionally, I am also proud to let you know that we received the 2024 Outstanding Local Streets and Road Project Award from the League of California Cities, the County Engineers Association of California, and the California State Association of Counties. This award celebrates innovative and cost-efficient programs across California that preserve and protect investments in local streets, roads, and bridges. The city's engineering staff, as well as our current council and past council members, are very proud of these awards. Joining me today in presenting these awards to you is the project team, Senior Civil Engineer Harry Mayo, Administrative Secretary Maria Villagomez, and Engineering Technician Sarah Main. Thank you.
Council, join me down, please.
Council members, if you might please stay up front. I'd like to take this opportunity to commence with the introduction of the next recognition presentation. And that's to actually give recognition to our current police chief, but soon to be promoted to higher role within the county sheriff's department, and recognize Captain John Wickham with our commemorative street sign proclaiming Wickham Way. And do we have that sign somewhere? We do have it. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to invite Captain Wickham up, and certainly use this as an opportunity to thank him for his years of service with the city. Captain Wickham's worked with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department for 33 years. Certainly an element of time worth celebrating. Over 30 years in a variety of assignments serving the high desert. And just a little over 14 years here assigned to the Victorville Station, serving a variety of different roles, including having served as detective here at Victorville Station from January 2005 to November 2012, then being promoted to the lieutenant role from 17 to 21. So he's been here working really closely with us since 2017, and then ultimately being promoted to captain in January of 2021. And of course, been recognized for all the good work that he's done here. He's been called to a higher calling, which is the B of A down in San Bernardino, working with Sheriff Dykus. So Captain Wickham's going to be moving on. And with that, we wanted to provide an opportunity for you all to recognize him, say thank you for his service. I certainly say thank you for not only his service, but the friendship that he's offered over the last several years of us working together. So with that, we present this commemorative street sign. And with that, I'll go ahead and call, do we want to move the podium forward? Why don't we have the council members take their seats, and then I'll go ahead and have Randy German come forward. And this would be the opportunity for us to recognize incoming captain, which is effectively police chief for the city of Victorville, Mr. Randy German, who I've worked with before. He's not new to Victorville, certainly not a stranger. He's been with San Bernardino County Sheriff Department for 23 years, working 18 of those years in the high desert, 11 of which at the Victorville Station, having served at the ranks of detective and sergeant here in the Victorville Station. I'm glad to see you back. Welcome back, Randy. I'm certainly looking forward to working with you, but I also wanted to use this as an opportunity to introduce you to the council, have the council introduce themselves to you, and provide you with an opportunity to say a few words if you like.
Sure. Yeah, like the city manager said, I've worked for the sheriff's department for 23 years. About 18 of those years I've worked in the high desert at all the stations except for Hesperia. And 11 of those years I've worked here at the city as a detective and a sergeant. I'm just honored to be back, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. You're welcome. We'll see if you say that in about a year. Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you please present the agenda and any revisions thereto?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have a revision to agenda item number 8. In the discussion section, the member-generated revenue was changed from 1.97 million to 1.5 million. Additionally, Victorville's annual contribution was changed from $72,317 to $66,822 annually, and another non-substantive grammar change. That concludes the revisions to the agenda, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to do introduction to public comments. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak?
Can we do conflict of interest declarations first, Madam Mayor?
Sure, yeah, that would go first, yes. At this time, are there any conflict of interest declarations?
No.
No? No? Thank you.
All
Now
right.
public comments. Thank you.
Yes, Madam Mayor, we do have a public comment card. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Victorville City Council. Your city council is interested in your ideas and opinions, and furthermore endeavors to incorporate them into its deliberations. At the same time, the council must be able to carry out its business in an organized and efficient manner, free from material disruption. Therefore, this meeting will be administered in accordance with the council's established policies and procedures and Government Code Sections 54957.9 and 54957.95. Individuals may speak on agenda items or on issues not posted on the agenda during the public comment section, provided those issues are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Individual speakers may address the council once per public comment period and once per each public hearing item for up to 3 minutes. Additional time may be allotted for appeal hearings in accordance with the city's adopted policy and procedures manual. Those who desire to comment on public hearing items may wish to reserve their remarks until that particular public hearing has been opened. All testimony is to be directed solely to the council. Although open meeting laws do not permit council members to engage in dialogue with any speaker during the public comment periods, please know your comments and questions may be taken into consideration by council members when discussing a particular agenda item. The presiding officer may briefly respond or have staff respond to statements or questions, or may request that the staff report back to the council at a subsequent meeting. Speakers are requested to comment as briefly as the subject permits. Once comments are invited, the speaker will be called on by name, then recognized by the presiding officer. The speaker will state the item number that will be addressed or that the subject is a non-agendized matter. Audience members may not disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of this meeting, and those who do are subject to removal from the meeting pursuant to Penal Code 403. Your understanding and cooperation are appreciated. Our first speaker this evening on a non-agendized item is Michelle Soto.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Soto.
First and foremost, my condolences for your loss. It sounds like he was a really great man. I'm here to urge our members and non-members alike to oppose a regulation proposed by the California Air Resource Board, CARB. This regulation ignores the complex and interconnected nature of road operation, as well as the reality of where technology stands today. By seeking to enforce zero emissions locomotive standards that will not be commercially available anytime soon in the foreseeable future. These regulations would adversely affect not only California, but the rest of the country. And at the most fundamental level, this regulation is preempted by federal law, which ensures that interstate commerce will not be burdened or hindered by the patchwork of competing state and local level standards. We strongly believe that this regulation will create a negative chain reaction if allowed to go into effect, with a significant impact on California and natural jobs, natural supply chains, the national and state local economy, increasing costs for shippers and commerce, and a few more. Their expectation, what we're opposing more than anything, is the timeline that they are demanding, which is beginning from 2026 to 2036, I believe. In a matter of 10 years, they're expecting for these expectations to be fulfilled when there is no technology, there is no electric locomotive that can come up the pass at this time. And while there is no technology, they will be immediately required to pay $800 million a year. And as it is, BNSF and UP have fulfilled the regulations that were presented to them. They've invested $1 million per new engines per locomotive, and we're talking about 1,000, more than 1,000 of locomotives on the rails. It is unfair that they come in at the last minute and pose new regulations again that are unrealistic in their timeframes and unrealistic to technology. So again, we're urging all of our members and non-members to please oppose. There is information where we can submit our opposition.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, there are no additional speakers.
Thank you very much. Our first business in order is a consent calendar, items 1 through 7. This time I invite a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that the council and the council acting on its various boards of directors take action in accordance with items 1 through 7 in accordance with the recommendations presented on the agenda.
Second.
I have a first by Councilmember Jones. I have a second by Councilmember Irving. Madam Clerk, will you take the vote?
Councilmember Gomez,
Aye.
Councilmember Irving,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. We've now taken action for items 1 through 7 in accordance with the recommendation set forth on the agenda. Next, we'll move on to written communication. Item 8, San Bernardino Council of Governments presentation. Mr. Metzler, would you kindly introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. This item was brought forward resulting from a request by this council, but initiated by Councilmember Jones and directly related to her role in serving as your primary rep to the SB COG. And so with that, we've brought this item back to include a brief overview as to the issue before the council, and quite honestly, it's the same issue for all the members of the COG, which are the 24 cities and towns along with the county of San Bernardino. As we're a member of that organization and have been a member of that organization dating back to 1973. And before the COG is a couple of basic issues, more so relating to action it took at its board meeting on January 3rd, which effectively approved an amendment to its existing governance structure, which is the Joint Powers Authority Agreement, or JPA. But that amendment is also establishing new methodology for which it can assess its members, and that effectively is through policy instead of through JPA action. And so ultimately, that's the question before this council, because for the effectiveness of the JPA to go in place, it does require for members that want to continue on with the organization, all members to actually approve and sign the JPA. And so with that, because we have primary and alternate reps effectively attending those meetings and reporting back to you, we thought it'd be helpful as well to also invite presentation, which was part of the original request from the council, to actually have a presentation made by representatives of the SB COG. And so with us today, we have certainly Mr. Ray Wolf, which is the executive director of the organization in attendance, but we also have Monique Ariano, who leads the COG efforts, and she's got a brief presentation to share with you all.
And Madam Mayor, since this was my request, may I additionally tee it up for just a moment?
Okay,
Thank you.
let's, hold on, please. Madam Clerk, would you read the recommendation? Then I'll let you.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, any action is at the discretion of your honorable city council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam.
Councilwoman Jones.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So in addition to what Mr. Metzler just stated, I requested that this item come forward because I think it's important for our council to really take a look at the amended JPA, and we do have to take action one way or the other. And because there's a change in policy as to how membership dues are assessed, and that would mean essentially about a 2 1/3 times increase to our membership dues. I thought it important to hear from SB COG in particular as to what has been the benefit to Victorville, particularly over the course of time, and what the projected benefits are with the change in its structure going forward. And also, I think, what are the benefits to the region, and how that benefit to the region could also benefit our city. So I wanted to make sure that our council had a full presentation before we make such a serious decision. So with that, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I don't know your name.
That's okay. I'm Monique Ariano with San Bernardino Council of Governments. Thank you so much for inviting me out. Happy to be here. I'm going to try and keep that brief definition, but I'm going to give you a lot of information, so please interrupt me as I go. I'm happy to answer questions either as I go or at the end. So who is SBCOG? We are the collective voice for the entire region. So we are governed by a board of directors that includes one elected representative from every jurisdiction in the county and the 5 county supervisors. We are funded mostly through membership dues, and we do have supplemental program funds that we have used in the past, but they are now expended, and that is the purpose for amendment number 4, really. So why are we important? We operate with the assumption that we are filling gaps for the local agencies. We work on projects that don't necessarily fit within a clean box that cities typically have staff for or resources to handle. Those include things like housing element updates, city-county conferences, regional housing trusts, the emergency communication nurse system. These are all projects that we have done over the last 5 years. I'm going to highlight a few of them and really kind of relate it specifically to Victorville. So the first one I want to highlight is the emergency communication nurse system. This is a program that we worked with our dispatch center, Confire, and the county fire chiefs to put in place, which is a program that provides for registered nurses to be a part of the 911 process. So when a caller calls 911, they go through the typical protocols, and the dispatcher determines whether it's an emergency or it's not an emergency. If it's an emergency, it goes through the typical response. They send out lights and sirens, and that's taken care of. If they determine that it's not an emergency, it gets sent over to this ECNS program. And what they do is identify the correct level of service that these individuals need, and they try to set them up with that. So whether that's a doctor's appointment or a ride to urgent care or really a prescription refill, our nurses handle that. And the results that it was implemented in 2020 at the height of the COVID pandemic. And since then, we've been taking data, and the results have been that there has been a decrease in dispatched ambulances, which was one of the main goals of the program. More ambulances are available for emergencies. They are able to provide that those low acuity patients to the correct point of care rather than sending out an ambulance or a fire engine if it's not needed. And to date, there have been no negative patient outcomes. The data statistics that we've pulled show that about 10% of the calls that go to this system originate from Victorville specifically, but it serves the entire region that Confire serves, which is about 85% of the county. And this program, this is data that where the program was working at about 20% capacity as they were staffing up. As of January, that program is now fully staffed, and Confire anticipates that the calls will increase, but they think that the percentages are going to remain about the same. Okay, IREN. This is a regional partnership program with SBCOG, WRCOG, which is Western Riverside Council of Governments, and Coachella Valley Council of Governments, and it was established to fill gaps in existing energy efficiency services. And the goal is to accelerate action in the region, specifically through local government activities related to climate change. The 3 main areas that IREN covers are listed there. The public sector program the goal is to build capacity and knowledge to enable local governments to effectively leverage energy efficiency services. Workforce education and training is to ensure that there is a trained workforce to support and realize energy efficiency saving goals across sectors. And then for codes and standards, we work closely with local building departments and the building industry to support, train, and enable long-term streamlining of energy code compliance. This program is funded through the California Public Utilities Commission by ratepayers that are customers of SoCal Gas and SoCal Edison. So we've just recently begun looking at options at the City of Victorville's Creative Arts Theater with a walkthrough last month. And we're also interested in providing a fellow to Victorville with the cost of the fellow, which is about $33,000 covered by IREN. The next project is our Smart County Master Plan. So the Smart County Master Plan is actually funded by $1 million through the county. They asked us to lead the project because we are able to facilitate the discussions among the various jurisdictions. And the goal of this project is really to identify technology and communication improvements that can be made to cross jurisdictional boundaries to support the resources of all of our member agencies. So we're looking at it to be a roadmap for those improvements. And then the goals are to improve technology infrastructure across the region, to address growing technology needs, equitable resource distribution, and to share and really break down silos. We want to share information and then to serve the county again in all the jurisdictions. So we completed an early action plan last July for the Smart County Master Plan. And I know this map is hard to read, but we really kind of wanted to illustrate the fact that we're looking at projects across the entire region. But the projects that I want to highlight that are specific to Victorville, we are looking at implementing smart intersection and smart corridor improvements along Bear Valley Road. And that road will include 3 jurisdictions, including Caltrans, to really kind of see if we can move traffic through a little bit easier, as well as identify, the extreme heat days. Possibly, I put LPRs if your jurisdiction is interested. We have a suite of improvement options for the cities to really look at and see what they want to include. And then another project is CAD to CAD. So we worked again with ConFire and the fire chiefs to identify this program option. And this would leverage existing operations platforms that public safety groups use. And that would be to connect neighboring emergency communication centers with cooperating agencies through a cloud-based communication system. And the whole purpose of this is to, whether routine calls or major emergencies are occurring, agencies have the need to share information and resources to help mitigate escalating scenarios and protocols to do so. Currently, there is no mechanism for these communications to occur. So CAD to CAD would put emergency responders in a much better position when responding to emergencies, whether they're great or small, that cross jurisdictional boundaries. Oh, shit again. Keep skipping. Okay. The next is our grant opportunities. So we as an agency, we research and we write grants on behalf of our member agencies. We do multi-jurisdictional program grants, whether they're transportation or other. We do energy grants as well. We've been able to bring in $46 million over the last 5 years. 19 million of that has been awarded since July of 2023. And examples of different types of projects that we are able to get are within sustainability planning, sustainable communities programs. But the one we're going to highlight right now is REAP. And that is through our planning department. The Regional Early Action Planning Grant, there were 2 phases. The first one was in 2020, and we were able to actually write housing elements and submit those for approval on behalf of our member agencies, the ones that were interested in participating in that. We've done site inventory analyses for those implementation practices. We've also looked at accessory dwelling unit capacity analyses, a lot of technical studies for the benefit of some of our agencies that don't necessarily have the resources to do that. And then in REAP 2.0, they changed the programming and increased the funding. So we actually identified projects across our region that we were able to apply for and bring funds to San Bernardino County. And that okay, these are the statistics that we've identified for the grants that we've been able to bring in. It's broken down by subregion, but essentially the total is $32 million, and then the 2 REAP programs are broken out of that. So this is information that I actually presented to our board of directors when I needed to give them an update as to how the COG is doing. In 2018, they approved a program of work and a fund source for us to use, which was the PACE Hero programs. That funded our work plan over the last 5 years, which we were able to do all of those projects and programs under. And since then, those funds have been expended. So I took that information and I gave them an updated work plan for 2 years with what we had in place. Okay, and so when I took that information, I also gave them a look ahead at the budget. And in 26-27, with the HERO funds expended, we're in deficit because the member agency dues are not enough to sustain the work that we do. And that's just something that they had to deal with. And so from that discussion, the board created an ad hoc and asked me to work under them for them to give me some direction as how they wanted to proceed with what the COG is going to look like moving forward. And so why are these changes that I'm going to talk about important, which relate directly to amendment number 4, is we want to continue the programs and projects. We want to expand on what we've been doing. We want to continue to fill the gaps for our member agencies, and we want to provide that facilitating opportunity for all the collaboration that can occur across the region. Okay, this is the ad hoc that was created. These are the board members that I was working under for direction as we went through this process starting in August of last year. And we also created an ad hoc of the City County Managers Technical Advisory Committee. We meet monthly with all of the city managers and the county managers, the ones that participate. And we were able to establish this group to really provide us direction as we move forward with this. So why are we proposing these changes? Essentially, we received direction from the board back in July. And what we did was we analyzed our sister agencies, the sister COGs, and these budgets are way less than what their actual budgets are. But what we did was we pulled all of the information for how they administer, because they have access to fund sources that we don't have access to. So San Gabriel Valley COG spends about $4 million on their administrative costs. WRCOG is 2.3. CVAG is about 2.8, and the average across those is about 3 million. And our spending is 658,000 for our administrative costs. Okay. So what are the proposed changes to the funding structure? Currently, the existing condition with the Council of Governments is we use a 50% population and a 50% assessed valuation to identify what the member agency dues are. As we started looking at iterations of what this increase could look like and how we're going to essentially allocate that cost across the region, our city managers were very clear that assessed valuation is not something that they wanted to pursue. It doesn't provide an accurate look at what actually comes into the region. So we are changing that, and that is a main reason why we are proceeding with amendment number 4. But the current dues with the new structure, and I'm sorry I didn't say this before, but we are increasing our budget from that 658,000 up to 1.5 million annually. So the current due structure for Victorville specifically is $20,000, and the proposed due increase would bring it up to $66,822. We had, again, those supplemental funds from HERO, which were now expended. So those supplemental funds, we will continue to seek in the form of grants and any other program opportunities that come available. But in order to have a sustained COG, we need to rely on our member agency dues. So the proposed changes are we would provide baseline services at that 1.5 million and then optional subscription services if some member agencies were interested in pursuing projects that weren't necessarily relating to all of the jurisdictions. We would need to modify the JPA so that we can adjust for the dues calculation. The JPA is specific that it's the 50% population and 50% evaluation. And since we're moving away from that, that requires the amendment. And then we are going to update the due calculation to a 50% population and 50% general fund base sales and property tax revenue. So that'll be based on actuals. And then an annual cost increase according to the consumer price index or 2%, whichever is less. So the current programs that Victorville benefits from, I did a listing of these, but there's other opportunities to participate. One is the regional early action planning. We are working with Victorville through the IRUN program. They benefit from the emergency communication nurse system and then the Smart County master plans. And moving forward, there will be additional opportunities, which I will chat about. soon as the slide changes. Okay, the cost analysis that we've completed for Victorville, so the current dues are $20,000, the proposed dues are 66. We looked at the average cost for staff. The staff time that we looked at is mid-level planning staff because that's what we use when we do these types of programs. And then if we're looking at budgeting for consultant costs, we're about $100,000 through the COG. So that is just a snapshot of that. And then the member dues cost allocation. Okay, so I wanted to give you a picture of how we got to where we are. Again, we had been working under the ad hoc. We researched our sister agencies and looked at the methods that they use, which is common to what we currently use, that assessed valuation method. And then we looked at the existing dues and the amount per the jurisdiction, and that includes the 2 increases that were done in 2016 and 2021, which were 5,000 and 8,000 together, just straight across the board for every jurisdiction. And then we identified 3 options for distribution moving forward. One was 100% population, one was 100% tax revenue, and then that 50-50 split. And that provided the equitable distribution that the board was looking for. And then based on the direction that we received from the board, we are looking at amendment number 4, which is deviating again from the JPA established method of member dues, and then making the budgeting and the cost allocation done through policy. So it gives a little bit more flexibility to the board. So the budget, again, is that 1.5 million, and this is a pie chart of how that is going to be allocated. Existing staff is currently $500,000. New staff is about 422, and then the consulting team is going to be about 559. That increases us from that 658 to the 1.5, and increases our staff from basically 1 person to 3 people. And those staff areas that we're going to be looking at implementing are going to be additional project areas, project management areas, working as liaison to all of our member agencies, as well as all of the SCAGs, the sister agencies as well. We're looking to do a little bit more regional advocacy on behalf of our members, and then increasing significantly our grant writing and coordination across the region. And then hiring more consultant support is going to be a key to that. And then this is a look at the cost share across the county. So what I really want to highlight here is that half of that pie chart is really, the cost is covered by 5 agencies, and then the rest, the other half being covered by the remaining 20, and then Victorville, right? So basically paying 4% of the entire cost. Okay, and then through the process that we did with the ad hocs, we looked at the different projects and programs that other agencies provide to their members. And so I made a list of the ones that were of interest to the ad hoc, that these could be starting points for discussions when we actually start to update the work plan again, which would be done relatively quickly after the increase would take place. So the timeline, we got board approval back in January, and between January and April, we are working on our member agency approvals of amendment number 4, so that we can begin the new dues system as of the new fiscal year. That's it. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask my council that all of their questions get directed to Mr. Metzler. Whatever Mr. Metzler needs to pass on, then he will go ahead this way. SB COG is a guest here. Let's treat him as that, please. Councilmember Jones, do you want to start since it's yours, or you'll?
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. So this is a lot of information. And so for most of my council, a lot of this is pretty new to us, right? Although our Madam Mayor has been in Public Works for 4 years, so I don't know about that. But so this is a significant change, is it? So Mr. Metzler, am I free to ask Monique, because some of this is specific to the COG?
Yes,
Are you
please.
good with that? Thank you. So a lot of this is, this is a big change in the JPA, is it not?
Yes, because it changes the method of how the dues are assessed.
And And that's, I mean, just to drill this down to its most basic form, that's needed because, to be very real, even if we increase this and we go with this, we're still at probably less than half of the average of other COGs, correct?
Oh, yes, we are.
Right?
We are less than half of the other.
I
counties.
mean, right now we're at what?
So right now we
A
are.
little
at
over 500,000?
615,000. If we increase it to 1.5, that's still half of what the average is across the other.
Right, so we're still, and this is the largest county in the state, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you know, my concern with this throughout is, I mean, I know that we're kind of 4% according to that chart of contributing in thinking about the 24 other, or 23 other agencies, right? But I always want to get down to the details and have a very specific work plan, but I just heard you say that we're going to update this in short order once we get the requisite approvals. Is that fair?
That is correct. It would actually need to occur pretty quickly after the first of the fiscal year, so July 1st. I would start that process immediately because I need to figure out what the priorities are.
Okay, so can I ask you, of the 24 member agencies, how many have already given their go-ahead?
16 thus far. I have several scheduled actually today. There's, I think, 2 next week and then a couple next month, but we're coming in on the.
We're coming in on the deadline. So in reality, do you have to have all 24 for the JPA to go forward, the
Mm.
amendment?
Legally, no. We would need, for the JPA to continue, the board would need to make the determination if they wanted to continue with the current structure, if 1 or 2 decide they don't want to participate.
Right. Well, that's what I meant. So the amended JPA has to be unanimous. Is that correct?
If the jurisdiction wants to participate, they can. It doesn't need to be unanimous for the JPA to move forward.
But if the jurisdiction wants to participate,
Yes,
gotcha.
they would need to.
Gotcha. Okay, so this for Victorville, we're looking at a 2 1/3 times increase. And so I look at, you know, what's the bang for the buck, right? And
Your
we
time is up.
thank you.
Councilmember Harriman?
I have one question. I think on your presentation, it had the dues going up to 66,000, and my staff report says 72,317. Is there?
And that was one of the corrections that we called out in the.
Okay, and I apologize. I got that late. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Gomez?
Is having membership with SBCOG dependent on Measure I funding from SBCTA?
It is not. They're two separate legal organizations, and so SBCTA is the Transportation Authority, San Bernardino County Transportation Authority. It's another hat that staff of the SBCOG wear. So it's easy to see them as synonymous, but they're two separate legal entities. SBCTA is responsible for administering separately the transportation dollars, and as we know it, the Measure I dollars that we rely on for transportation projects. So COG being separate, COG being specific to, of course, what Ms. Ariano had spoken to in what they provide as services.
Do we know when the city, I suppose the city voted no for a membership to SBCOG? I'm not understanding if we voted no and we're having a second dip.
So what you're speaking to is what's in the staff report, and the no vote that's addressed or spoken to in the staff report is recognizing that at the SBCOG board meeting on January 3rd, Victorville was the lone dissenting vote. There was one abstention. Victorville's no vote largely was resulting from it's concerned that the rate increase was being proposed without a detailed work plan in place. And that was the comment made by your appointed member at that meeting. And so notwithstanding our lone no vote, the motion still move forward with the SBCOG board actually approving the amendment. And so that's set in motion. Effectively, what we're dealing with today, along with all of the other member agencies throughout the county, is as the SBCOG board had directed or approved the moving forward with the change in the JPA. Now it's seeking the actual approval from the respective agencies. Those that want to continue on, they're asking the agencies to approve the Fourth Amendment. Effectively, if you don't want to continue on, then you don't approve the JPA amendment, I think is a simple analysis to it.
So, from 20,000 to 66, is that roughly a 40% increase in those, fundings, and where would we receive our funding source from?
So the calculation, I think it's much more than 40%, but we would effectively fund this likely out of the same funding source that we currently fund our membership dues, which I believe is out of the general fund. I will tell you this, that if the council is desirous of continuing on with the COG, I can tell you as much that the issue for us isn't about the actual money. We can actually afford that. It's not a fiscal impact issue to the city, considering the fiscal position that we're in. So I'd at least like to clarify that to you, that it's not because we're in budget crunch type environment. We're certainly not. We're not the wealthiest either. I'll put that out there. But we're in good enough shape to be able to handle financially this change in price. This more so has to do with an issue, the basic issue of whether or not you as a council see the value in the COG, and do you want to continue on with the COG?
And, how many grants this year did SBCOG help Victorville with? Do we know? Fiscal year?
I would ask Ms. Ariano. I think that was part of her presentation.
Yeah, we don't have anything that we've won so far. However, we are working on a grant with Victorville right now for $173,590 for the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant. It is an allocation. It's a formula allocation, so it's on the table for you. The issue is that the technical reporting and technical requirements, they've asked us to help them proceed with that.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Erving?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have three questions, one for Ms. Ariano, one for my colleague, our representative with the COG, and one for Mr. Metzler. So for Ms. Ariano, I think I already know the answer, but can you state for the record, if we do not opt in other words, we do not choose membership, what's the impact for Victorville?
The impact practically is that Victorville would not be a part of any of the regional programs that we would be working on, Housing Trust, ECNS, all of the programs that we've already implemented and anything moving forward, Smart County, all of those projects that we kind of identified, and anything that would be moving forward with the increased budget.
Okay. For my colleague, who also is our representative on the COG, Member Jones, now that you've heard Ms. Ariano's presentation, and she mentioned that she would expedite the new, the new work plan, are you inclined to support the amendment?
Madam Mayor, may I answer that?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So, I am, but I'm willing to make a motion for the council's consideration with a caveat to it.
Are you willing to share what that caveat would? Never mind.
I mean, but because I would seek a demonstration of its effort towards Victorville. That would be the caveat.
Okay, very good. And for Mr. Metzler, sir, first of all, thank you for stating that membership, you know, if it's not about what we can't afford it, the affordability, we can handle that. But are we prepared to go it alone?
We certainly could. You know, I would say we could. We have a very talented team. We have a lot of resources. Would we take the same shotgun approach as the COG? Probably not. We'd be much more narrow in our approach and obviously doing things that fit more directly into our strategic efforts. So we certainly could, if the council so directed us to go that direction.
So that's an affirmative. We are
We are what?
prepared to go it alone.
We are, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's it, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions also. Mr. Metzler, they told on that, the nursing system through CAL FIRE. I sit on that board, and last time I remember, we pay for all our calls that we get specifically to Victorville. It's not SB COG helps us out with the calls. We have to pay for all the calls that come into our jurisdiction, correct?
Yeah, and I think we're kind of talking about two different, even though it's one program, it's two different components. The ECNS program is administered through CONFIRE. We're a member of CONFIRE. We're a contributing member to actually the costs as a member to that organization. However, the initial effort to introduce the concept and get consensus from other members within the county to effectively get buy-in for that program as being needed, and then to be able to kickstart the actual initial funding for the program certainly was something that the COG had taken on. As far as the COG continuing forward with the program, the growth of the program is, now that it's launched with the help of the COG, will be actually expanded on by the members of CONFIRE and the CONFIRE organization. But certainly we wouldn't have gotten to where we're at right now at CONFIRE without at least the regional effort put forward by the COG in kicking things off.
Okay. Our signals upgrades, in fact, we're gonna be voting on some later on. We've already started upgrading our signals ourselves, correct? And the LPRs, we have 30-some in place, I think?
Oh, on the ALPRs, no, we got 123 or so. We've got quite a few.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think your comments are kind of speaking to perhaps what's been shared with us at the working level of the COG, which I think is valuable to know, because even though we're working on it at a localized level and trying to introduce smart systems, one of the things that the COG is doing with its working group, I know on the IT side, Mr. Mazarul Islam has been a part of that group as well, is the smart the smart county planning effort that Monique, Ms. Ariano did speak to. And one of the efforts there, one of the visions there is to take, a lot of what we're doing individually as cities and establishing connectivity so you can actually connect better across borders, across jurisdictional borders, to better sync some of those systems, whether it's signal systems, whether it's emergency announcing systems, whatever it might be. That's an effort. Certainly the COG is looking at trying to connect all of the agencies, since a lot of the agencies are looking at doing things individually. Their goal is to try to bring things more connected.
Okay. You already answered how many grants we've gotten. What I have a problem with, this map that you showed us, that big pink area that's the high desert, that we've gotten 12 million plus, and this little green area right here that's all your little cities down the hill, that they've gotten the same amount as we have. So we've had to spread our 12 million over this whole entire high desert, and they've been allowed the same 12 million in that little area right there. As to do with SCAG, we've stood alone in a lot that we do. When it comes to the Joshua Tree, when it comes to grant funding up here, when it comes to a lot. So I sit on a couple of the boards. There's a couple of maps we're not even on. So it's just a comment that's what I have a problem with, the amount of money. And we're not even on the board of directors, not even anybody from the desert, not one person. Everybody's from down the hill. Been nice little money down the hill. Ontario, Ranch Cucamonga, Fontana, Montclair, San Bernardino, 4th District, 2nd District, Needles, Ranch Cucamonga. We don't get invited to a lot of places because I know no one wants to drive up the hill. That's why we live and work here. There's,
If I may respond.
you can?
Yeah.
Mr. Wolf, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
If you haven't missed me in Skag.
So the ad hoc that you're pointing to, that we were showing earlier, the Board of Directors ad hoc was opened up to the entirety of the Board of Directors. And it was those that volunteered, stepped forward to volunteer. What I think is really interesting is we have great representation around the county on the city manager's TAC, but not on the actual Board of Directors ad hoc. However, the ad hoc helped us to kind of narrow our focus on what we were going to talk about. Then we brought back the information back to the Board of Directors multiple times to get actual direction from the board. So the ad hoc helped seed the conversation with the Board of Directors. Putting your representative has been engaged all the way.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Okay, I have nothing else at this time. I'll invite a motion. Mrs. Jones, Councilmember Johnson, this is yours.
I appreciate that, Madam Mayor. Thank you so much. So I move that the council approve SBCOG's fourth amended JPA as well as the 2024 policy adopted by the SBCOG Board of Directors as to the method by which member dues are assessed. Further, that this council will continue as members of the SBCOG for a minimum of 2 years with the understanding that this council will receive an annual in-person update from the SBCOG about benefits received by Victorville and projected benefits.
I have a first. Is there a second on the pending motion?
Second.
I have a first by Councilmember Jones, a second by Councilmember Harriman. Comments on the pending motion? Councilmember Jones?
Thank you. So this has been, so first of all, it's been my great honor to serve on the SBCTA and the SBCOG. Just so everyone knows, I sit with 23 other members who I'm proud to say we have rigorous and robust discussions. I'm proud to say that we all are of the same mind that we need to have a regional perspective in what's going to get it done for our communities, because we know that when we are alone and by ourselves, we cannot possibly get as much done, certainly in terms of getting grants. The louder the voice is, oftentimes gets you the better grants, right? And we've seen that across the board in the state of California. And the San Bernardino is a huge county. And the concern that the Board of Directors has had is, you know, why aren't we getting our lion's share of what's out there for counties? And the conclusion has been that we don't have on the COG enough staff, enough energy being able to put into it because of limited resources. And I get that. But at the same time, I've had to balance that with, I'm very detailed oriented. I want a work plan, a detailed work plan. And while I haven't seen that, I have every expectation that we will get it from the COG. And I know the board that I work on enough to know that they're going to demand it in straight order once it's promised, right? And I know Mr. Wolf is going to do his due diligence. I also look at the fact that in the state of California, depending on what source you look at, and we have a wide range in looking at what our budget deficit is in the state of California. It's between $35 and $70 million. The Office of the Legislative Analyst has it, last I read, at $68 billion. That's a hefty swing from the surplus that we had just last year. Who is going to pay for that? Cities, school boards, right? And so I think for that reason, I think adding another 46,000 on a, we'll measure it every few years, right? I think that gives us enough leverage to have a stronger voice given the potential pain that cities are going to face going forward. I'm confident in the COG. Can Victorville do it on its own? Sure. Can we get the grants if the same kind of grants that a louder voice and 24 cities involved in something can get? I don't think so. Do we have a stellar team here at Victorville? We do. But I think that we have 24 representatives from our region that I think will work very hard to make sure that the COG gets it done. Again, for me, I think the COG is going to have to demonstrate with some annual updates for us as to its continued dedication to Victorville in particular. And again, it's only 4% of the entire membership due allotment, but Victorville is, in my view, the key to the high desert, and I want to make sure that our voice is heard and heard strongly. So I am in favor of this, but I want to see updates annually. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Harriman?
I would just reiterate what Councilman Jones is saying, and I would also say, being a resident up here for a very long time, I've always had a problem with how many tax dollars don't make it up here. So I'm looking forward to some things happening. There's a lot happening in my city. You can't deny that.
Councilmember Gomez?
Yes, so it's my understanding that in the county we have 51 cities. Before this assessment went through and approved by the board, there was 24 cities. And according to Mrs. Ariano, there's currently 16 cities. So I want to make that a clarification because I did hear that there was 24 cities somehow already embedded within this, but it's my understanding from reading the reporting that 24 cities were before the January approval and 16 cities so far, and a couple counting before there's a deadline.
Mrs. Ariano, it's not a question and answer. It's her. Thank you, though. Thank you. Go ahead, Councilwoman Gomez. I'm very sorry.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Irving?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I only want to say that although Victorville can go it alone, I see the value in belonging to the COG. So I believe in cooperation and collaboration and working together, and for the benefit of the region, I think that our membership, since it's affordable, I think we should continue with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have nothing. Madam Clerk, would you please take the vote?
Councilmember Gomez.
Nay.
Councilmember Irving.
Yes.
Councilmember Jones.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
No.
Motion passes with Councilmember Gomez and Mayor Becerra voting no.
At this time, we passed for the new COG to go through with the new funding. We're going to move on to item 9, revised Measure I 5-year capital improvement plan. Mr. Metzler, would you kind of introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Annually, the city adopts a 5-year CIP for all of its planned expenditures, which are for street and road purposes. And we've had a number of impacts on our street system this year, including storm-related activities. And especially as it relates to the Measure I dollars that we administer, we have to spend those dollars on actual projects that are in our CIP. So it's not uncommon to constantly have to evaluate our CIP and make changes where necessary. So with that, this item is to help address some of those needs to adjusting the actual CIP. We do have a brief presentation by your city engineer, Mr. Freddie Bonilla, and I'd like to turn it over to him at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council again. As Mr. Metzler indicated, we put together a quick overview presentation to kind of highlight some of the items discussed in the staff report. And then at the end of the presentation, Mr. Metzler and I are available to answer any questions that you may have. As the council is aware, Measure I is a 1/2 cent sales tax that was approved by the voters of San Bernardino County in 1989, and it was extended overwhelmingly in 2004, and it's secured through 2040. That 1/2 cent sales tax is what funds our roadway rehabilitation projects and partially funds our traffic signal and striping signage operations. To receive Measure I funds and to have them eligible for expenditures, the projects and personnel allocations and maintenance projects need to be in our capital plan. Typically, we do this in August, and the last plan for the current fiscal year, the 5-year plan from fiscal year 23-24 through 28-29 was approved at the August 15th City Council meeting from last year. SBCTA estimates that the city's allocation of Measure I funds will be approximately $38.4 million over the next 5 years. $38 million sounds like a lot of money, but when it comes to roadway projects and improvement projects, it is not a lot of money. So what's causing this change? Typically, we don't do mid-year capital plan updates. For the most part, we haven't had to. But this year is a very unique year in that we've had multiple 100-year storm events pass through the city. We've been awarded a grant for Village Drive Sidewalk project. We have seen the cost of these improvements skyrocket since COVID. Some of the unit prices that we've seen are as high as 20, 30, 40, 50% higher than what they were pre-COVID. And so that is causing us to do a change in our plan this fiscal year. Specifically, I'm going to touch on five projects that we are proposing changes on, and then that is causing us to defer some additional projects. So the first project is the catastrophic storm drain failure and street failure that we had on Eucalyptus Street that happened on August 20th of last year, right after our council approved the capital plan, unfortunately. Since that time, we've actually gone out, surveyed it. We've determined the needs of the repairs. We actually adopted a new project in our mid-year review, and we are proposing to use Measure I funds to be able to complete that project. If it's not on our capital plan, then it doesn't become an eligible reimbursement, and we are setting ourselves up for an audit finding. And so this project has been added to the capital plan to be able to pursue that, and we are in the final steps of completing the plans and specifications to be able to advertise that project, and we'd obviously like to repair that while the weather is good before our rainy season starts again in the fall. The second project is obviously the Bear Valley Road reconstruction project. As you may have seen, the contractor, C.A. Rasmussen, has started to put up traffic control signs. They were supposed to start last week. We had a little issue with our Caltrans permit, but we've got that secured, and they are mobilizing this week. That project was almost $9 million. And when you're receiving about $7 million from SBCTA funds, as you can see, something's got to give. The third project is actually a good news type project. This is a grant that we applied for and we received after our capital plan was approved. It's a $250,000 grant to install some sidewalk on Village Drive between our new signal projects from Village and Honey Ridge to Village and Puesta del Sol. That project requires a local match, and the local match is Measure I. So even though we are doing the project next fiscal year, we're including it in our plan for the following fiscal year. And last but not least is the 7th Street Traffic Signal Modification Project. This is an HSIP grant-funded project that, again, that you'll see on another item where the bids came in significantly higher than estimated. So this is causing us to do a capital plan update mid-year. So how do we do these projects? The only way we can do that, because of our limited dollars, is if we invest in certain projects, we have to defer other projects. These are the projects that we are going to pursue this current fiscal year. Sorry, I went one slide too many. And then this is the project that we are deferring. Some of those projects, the deferment is not long. Golden Triangle Slurry Seal project, for example, is in our current capital plan. We are proposing to do it next fiscal year. It's a very short delay of a couple of months. We'll be back here after July 1st, hopefully awarding a contract. But the biggest sort of victim, if you will, on our capital projects has been Mojave Drive reconstruction. It is in our current plan to do pavement rehabilitation on Mojave Drive from La Paz to Elevado Road. At the time that we awarded the contract for Bear Valley Road, we had to reallocate $2 million worth of Measure I funds to be able to complete that project. And the Seventh Street traffic signal modification project is basically forcing us to take an additional $1 million to be able to move forward with that project. I wish I was bringing better news. Unfortunately, these are the tough choices that we have to make as an agency as the cost of improvements go up and our funding is limited. The other victim, if you will, for lack of a better term, is Air Expressway. It was currently shown in year 5 of our 5-year capital plan. But as we do projects this fiscal year and we push Mojave out a fiscal year, something's got to give in the future. And unfortunately, Air Expressway was one of those. It will be back on the 5-year plan when we bring you the next capital plan update. We're in the process of doing our budget, and you will see that in fiscal year 28-29. But as I stated earlier, when we have limited funds and our needs are great, something's got to give, and unfortunately, it was these 2 projects. That concludes our brief presentation. Mr. Metzler and I are available for any questions that the council may have.
Madam Clerk, would you please read the recommendation?
That the Honorable City Council adopt resolution number 24-019, approving a revised Measure I 5-year capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2023, 2024 through 2027, 2028.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to take technical questions from the council members regarding this item. I'm going to start with Councilmember Gomez.
How is a quote-unquote need described and defined alongside with quote-unquote emergency when considering prioritization?
I think you're referring to the emergency failure at Eucalyptus Street. The storm drain failed as a result of Tropical Storm Hillary last August, and most of the pipe actually just failed. It's in the wash right now. We've got the street closed off right now. It's a dead-end road. But if we don't move forward with that project, and as we get more rain events, and we just had a couple of months ago, the damage just continues to exacerbate. So if we don't do anything right now, the cost of those improvements to repair the road and the drainage system to its previous condition just continue to exacerbate. So we're hoping to be able to do that project while we've got some good weather and avoid further damage to the street.
I was referring to the emergency projects such as Eucalyptus Street, Mojave Drive reconstruction. It says that there could be a couple of consequences if it's considered an emergency. So I was wondering if you had, I know you said something has to give, and I get it, but what I don't get is if we term something emergency and something happens, does that trigger some kind of standard that we get cited, or I mean, whatever the terminology is, which
If there's any citations to be worried about, it's just the further we wait, the further the damage comes if we get additional rain events.
And how does the CIP become modified when there's a known emergency project at stake but ignored for years? So I'm presuming that we prioritized as a city council, or did you bring a recommendation and the city council moved forth with it? How did that work?
When we started the fiscal year, we didn't anticipate the catastrophic failure of the storm event.
And if I might, Madam Mayor and members of the council, to say it slightly differently, prior to this item where we're dealing with the proposed amendment, my recollection is it was probably August of last year when we brought the last version of the 5-year CIP forward, and that was a byproduct of having just approved the budget. And so for the sake of putting an element of time in place, when we put together the current 5-year CIP, we approved that in August. There was no foreseeing, no predicting a tropical storm that could actually wipe out a roadway and do damage to one of your major storm drain systems. And so speaking to the earlier point when I introduced the item is for items to be eligible, Measure I expenditure eligible, they have to be in your 5-year CIP directly relating to that particular expense because we could not foresee that project back in August is why we're dealing with it now. Otherwise, if you don't put it in your CIP formally, then you're going to have to find an alternative funding source to take on that actual improvement work.
Okay, so then where these emergency projects, they are actually being placed, they're just being prolonged. Is that what's going on?
They're in the process of moving forward. We've come up with a scope of work and are we at the stage of bidding it yet?
Our plans are 100% complete. We're putting together the contract documents to be able to advertise it in a couple of weeks.
Okay, but my question was, I thought emergency meant we had to have it within this year, but the emergency ones are placed a year from today. Is that what's happening? But they're still part of the CIP, just moving a year or so ahead.
No, there's a multitude. I mean, if you look closely at, I mean, if you look closely at the staff report, there's different reasons to amend this. And some of the amendment has to do with because money has become constrained, we're having to move projects out to future years. But as it relates to the emergency, if you think of this amendment as a reconciliation to that scope of work that now has to be included because it's effectively a new project that given the emergency, it needs to be attended to now. That's why we're bringing that item forward. And I think the simple part of the reconciliation is by including that, it's affecting other projects that were already in the CIP approved last August.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Gomez. Councilmember Irving?
Okay, I need a little clarification here. So the proposed changes to the 5-year capital improvement plan includes traffic signals, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. We did have the project in our capital plan, but the bids came in significantly higher. And so in order to be able to move forward with that project, we need to allocate additional Measure I funds.
Okay. I guess I'm wanting to know, I read a public comment today regarding a traffic signal at Eucalyptus and Armagosa. And I think it spoke to, or I know this person has spoke to someone losing their life there and so forth. How do we include that traffic signal proposal on this list?
So first, the first way to deal with a traffic signal would actually be to conduct a traffic study and actually have a study identify that in fact it meets the actual warrants for a signal. And to put a signal in before it actually meets warrants could actually be a liability for the city. But when it's identified that it meets warrants, then that's going to be enough for the city engineer to identify that as a need and then start planning for it through this exact same CIP process to actually include that particular signal in the plan.
I appreciate that, but since I've been on the council, that particular intersection, I've heard people speak about that on more than one occasion. Right. So.
And so we actually have analyzed that roadway. And of course, we have heard the complaints as well. We're very familiar with that neighborhood. And despite the complaints, as loud as they are from a measurement perspective, from an analysis perspective, it's not yet achieving that threshold. And so while the complaints are loud, we're not seeing the traffic data to actually show that it's meeting warrants. It's not meeting warrants first, even for a controlled intersection, which would be stop signs, as an example. That's typically a precursor to your signal, and we're not even at that phase to have it fully controlled. There is a stop sign, I'm sorry, as it T intersects into Amargosa, but it's not fully controlled on the throughs on Amargosa. So We will continue to monitor it. Obviously, we listen to every single complaint that comes in and address them. That is a new community. They are complaining loudly. It is a highly traveled road, but we just don't have enough data to support the actual justification for a signal there at this point.
Okay, Madam Mayor and Mr. Metzler, I know I kind of veered off the issue. Thank you for allowing me. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Harriman?
I would just say I have the confidence in you, Freddie. You're a sharp guy. If I might make a remark to Councilman Irving's, I want to ask Keith, at that intersection she's referring to, how come we didn't make the developer do something there? Or because it only warranted an exit stop sign?
So I can't speak to the details of the traffic study, but that project, along with projects like it, is a part of the planning process, the entitlement process, ultimately going through the commission. There is a traffic study done there, and maybe Mr. Bonilla is more familiar with that study than I as to what it conditioned as a part of the approval of the track to be built out infrastructurally.
Yes, I think you're referring to track 20274 that's currently being developed by KB Homes. They did do a traffic study for the project, and at the time, based on that study, a signal was not warranted. The track is still being developed. I would say it's approximately 80% homeowner occupied. And before we do a detailed study, I would prefer that KB Homes completes their development. So now we have a routine set pattern, and then we can analyze that and move forward. Maybe.
Okay. You mentioned we got a week behind because of Caltrans and a permit. Why is Caltrans involved on Bear Valley Road?
The loops, the detection system at the intersection of Highway 395 and Bear Valley Road are going to be affected. So the minute you take the signal out of operation,
Got you.
to get a permit from.
Okay. I was going to say, because they don't do nothing. One last question, just if as that housing tract builds out, is that intersection now too far away to have the developer do something there? Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. But typically the way it works is you would condition the project to install the required public improvement. So in this specific case, because the signal was not warranted, we did not include that in the conditions of approval. Although every finished lot in that tract, it's 168 homes once it's fully developed, is paying into the city's roadway development impact fees. And so theoretically, they're paying into future projects that could be potentially a signal at that location.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Harriman. Councilmember Jones?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Mr. Metzler, I mean, I can only imagine what you and your team have been through in dealing with some of the unexpected rain events that we've had and the damage that it's caused. I'm sure no one likes to see delays in projects. Are you confident that your team has done all it can do to make sure that we're dealing with our road situations in the most logical manner, meaning that those areas that have the most risk involved are being tended to first, or what does that look like?
The answer is yes, I am, and I'll just expand on that a little bit, because one of the things that we did last August, and we intend to replicate it again around this August of this year, and we intend to make it an annual thing, because of course, this is a very complex subject in really trying to determine, how to prioritize your roadway improvements. And then, of course, based upon the cost benefit analysis that goes into helping decide that, it's easy to question for a person that doesn't understand or isn't exposed to that level of detail, to question, why would you prioritize this road over that road? And so we do that, and that is certainly a consideration as a part of this 5-year plan. In fact, that's a big backbone for it. What throws us off, I will say, is when you have that emergency such as the eucalyptus incident. That throws things askew because now you're dealing with an emergency situation, and while you had priority 1, 2, and 3, say it's a roadway project, those get bumped basically, especially if you're at a constraint for funds. And that's what we're up against in this amendment here today. What we intend to do in August and in future years is open up that black box, as we used to call it, and help explain to you the cost benefit and how we've arrived at the priority. So I'm confident that we've done everything we can as staff to establish the right priorities. But again, what we're likely going to show you in August is similar to the message that you heard last August, which is it's not just us saying we don't have enough money. We can actually show you, very simply put, based upon our assessment of all of your pavement conditions throughout the city, and we can actually attach a value to that, a present value as to what it would cost if we had a magic wand, what it would cost to actually bring your roadways back to an acceptable level based upon a PCI rating. And we can actually translate that into cost. And what we did in last August is we compared that cost to actually what we get in Measure I revenue, and maybe it's 8 or 9 million, don't quote me on the number right now. But the point is 8 or 9 million compared to close to $150 million is our problem. And what we'll likely show you in August is a comparison of if it was $150 million last year, it wasn't, don't quote me on the number, but for illustration's sake, it's very possible that what you'll see in this August, that number is probably going to grow. And it might grow to say 160, again, don't quote me on the projection there. But the point in my fear is that the condition of the roads are going to exponentially worsen, driving up the cost to actually get caught up, and the revenue that you're generating isn't moving at the same, it's actually probably flatline or very little growth in revenue. We've got to, and it's not just an us problem, it's a structural problem that all cities are dealing with, especially cities that have grown the way we've grown, where you've got 450 lane miles, center lane miles of roadway in a 75 square mile city. We're a big city, a lot of roadway responsibilities, and we just don't have the right money resources to tackle that. So, we will have to try to prioritize finding alternative funding sources over the next however many years. It could be a 5-year project for us. But this issue isn't going away. And we're going to eventually have to tackle it, some other way.
Okay, and then for everyone's benefit, could you briefly explain what a PCI rating is?
PCI is an it's an acronym for Pavement Condition Index. And so it's basically a rating that's assigned to a roadway to indicate it's in very good condition, poor condition. There's more variations, but basically good condition or bad condition. It assigns a rating to the road, and it does that we do that for every single roadway in the city, and then we actually aggregate them to get a citywide PCI rating. But it's when you start looking at the individual PCIs, you have to start looking at them to determine your priority. And then that's when you start factoring priority based upon actual money that you have available to take on those priorities. One of the biggest challenges that we run into is once you get into an increasingly deteriorating roadway situation, unless it's attended to quickly, it's going to deteriorate at an exponential rate to the point where your cost may be something as simple as perhaps slurry to where eventually it could be a reconstruct because you don't attend to the roadway improvement fast enough.
And I appreciate that. That leads me to my next, certainly PCI rating was involved in the analysis for priority, right?
Correct.
Okay. So what you just said really leads me to my next question, because I remember back in 2017 when I was sitting in the audience before a council member, our former city manager was talking about Bear Valley Road being repaved, and I don't know if it was a slurry but I don't think it was a complete reconstruction at that time. But since then, we're in 2024, and just now going to, begin that project because it was delayed. So delays can cause for more expensive repairs down the road. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Right. And so, I mean, I guess that's the conundrum that we're in, where we have to constantly prioritize and reevaluate given weather conditions. And certainly we've had some real serious rain events that have kind of stuck it to Victorville and our neighboring communities. But apart from that, Mr. Metzler, I mean, we do have extreme weather here in the high desert, and that just lends itself to problems anyway, right?
Absolutely. Over the course of a 24-hour period, when we say extreme, you can go from below freezing to 90 degrees in a day. You get a dramatic swing in temperature, and that's not the best for a roadway that might have a crack in it, because then it contributes to expansion, contraction, maybe the freezing of water in a crack, and that leads to potentially making a crack bigger, especially if you don't get out there and protect the crack in the road with, say, a slurry seal product.
Got it. Okay, and then one final question, if I may. on Air Expressway.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Madam Jones, is your question brief?
Very brief.
You may finish the
I
question.
appreciate that. Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. I noticed that it's being extended out to 28, 29. I mean, I know that road is traveled a bit by trucks and there's some alligatoring on it, and I've seen people drive at high speeds. Is this realistic to extend it out that far?
Which roadway, I'm sorry?
Air Expressway, National Trails Highway to Phantom West. That's the pavement rehab.
Let me have Freddie address that question as to it being realistic, because he may know better about the shifting of monies and so forth.
So when Mr. Gangler actually presented the capital plan last August, Air Expressway was in year 5 of the capital plan. So when we looked at the cost benefit analysis, and it's a formula that's based on the benefit, how much traffic is on that road, what is the increase in PCI index, how much is the cost. When we looked at that, the other projects that are ahead of it on the capital plan did have a higher benefit to cost ratio, and that is why it was on year 5.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, do I have any time left?
53 seconds.
Sure,
Can I speak? And I'm not a tax guy, but I do want nice streets in my city. Have we looked into a bond measure of some type just for our streets?
We have, to answer the question directly, we have not looked into a bond measure for our streets. It's something we can certainly evaluate. I think it gets more detailed than that. We'd actually have to identify a funding source that a bond could effectively leverage, and so that could be some type of property-based assessment. Certainly could be something like another Measure P, maybe call it Measure R, even though we don't have a say in the letters used for the measures. Measure R for roads. I mean, certainly we believe something like that is going to have to be considered if we're going to be able to issue a bond, because I think a bond is the type of mechanism that likely gives you the best chance at catching up. We saw how big that difference is. We saw how great that need is in terms of just trying to get our roadway systems to a more acceptable level. If it's $140, $150 million, you're not even going to generate that. Let's say you did another Measure P. I mean, we've been very thankful and we've been very successful in investing that throughout the community the right way. And hopefully the community has seen that. But to give you an example, that generates $30 million, which is huge for us, especially as the focus has been everything from public safety to community improvements. But my point in that is, if you did another Measure P, call it Measure R as an example, the $30 million isn't immediately solving your $140-150 million problem. So you would have to leverage that, issue a bond if you wanted to try to tackle everything in say, a very quick period of time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Metzler, this page, the one with the graphs, the bars. It says our total estimate revenue is $38,444,909 for the next 5 years. How is it gauged how much money we're getting?
SBCTA has a
How is the 3844?
Yeah.
Okay, so looks like it's an aggregate. It's a sum of the 5 years of money. I'm just guessing that. But this is a pass through from SBCTA, so it's actually a percentage of the half-cent sales tax. So with the 8 3/4 of sales tax that's assessed on taxable goods here in Victorville, the breakdown that comes back to the city, we know the Measure P is 1%. We know the general fund gets 1%. But also what we don't talk about too much, unless we're talking about roads, is inside that sales tax is a half-cent for road improvements. A portion of that, I'm sorry, all of that is collected first by SBCTA, that entire half-cent. Once they collect it, they divvy it up because there's different priorities prescribed in the Measure I law. And effectively, these numbers that Mr. Bonilla has in front of you are effectively the pass-through after SBCTA carves out what's needed for, say, regional improvements. That's what comes through to benefit us for our local improvements.
We're gonna honestly buy their story of 7 million for the next 5 years? I mean, how don't we not fight it? How can they say that we can only get between 7,300,000 to 7,800,000 in the next 4 years when we've shown that our tax revenue has gone up? So have their pockets gotten bigger and ours stays the same?
I can't say that. What I can tell you is that even we on our sales tax projection lines, we're projecting 1%, maybe 2% in a good year. I mean, sales tax doesn't grow that exponential or at a much greater pace than that. I haven't done the calculation, but just looking at the math here, it looks like you've got growth, very small growth, so it's probably a very small percentage. I can tell you we use the same firm for sales tax estimating that the SBCTA does. So without exact data to compare, I can tell you at least it's my belief, and I would bet on the fact that this likely tracks similar to how we're projecting our sales tax revenue.
So again, I bring SB Cog's map. This big pink area gets the same amount of money as that little green area right there. And we sit there and we take it. Is there anything we can do? I mean,
is there anything we can do as it relates to SBCTA? I would say no, because honestly, they're the administrator of funds that are actually prescribed in a voter-approved measure. And so there's nothing we can really do or encourage them to do differently as it relates to administering those funds. Those are pretty statutorily set. This is the only word I can come up with right now, even though it's measure prescribed. But I think the comment made by Mayor Pro Tem Harriman is where our thinking is going to have to go, because to answer your question, nobody else is going to help us. We're going to have to help ourselves, kind of thing, if we're going to really try to tackle this problem and try to solve this problem. And so you're going to have to take matters in your own hands.
so asking SB Cog to help us is,
So
take 66,000 we're paying. Well, forget it. I'll stop. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. At this time, I'll invite a motion for this item.
I move to approve staff's recommendation.
I'll second. We have a move by Councilmember Harriman, and a second by Mayor Becerra. We're going to take comments on the pending motion. Councilmember Harriman?
I'd just like to go back. Yeah, I'd like to figure something out because being in the industry, kind of, I'm an expansion and contraction thinker all the time, and the hot and cold just destroys stuff up here. Especially when we complain we don't get rain, and then when we do, it just savages us. And so I am willing to invest money in my city to have better roads. I just hope maybe a majority of the rest of the city would be.
Thank you. My comment is thank you very much, Mr. Bonilla and Mr. Metzler, for the work put into this. I know hard decisions. Thank you very much. Councilmember Gomez?
No comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Irving?
No comments, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jones?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So again, so this item was just really dealing with the approving the capital improvement plan, and we got into some nitty gritty on this, and it's understandable because roads is a very complex issue. And again, this is how much we receive is driven by Measure I. It has nothing to do with COG or SBCTA. It's not arbitrary by any means. And just to make it clear, Measure I sunsets in 2040, and most of those funds have been all but expended or appropriated already. And so I sit on a committee, a transportation investment committee, to look at, are we going to look at a measure to extend Measure I and or look at another measure in tandem or separate from? And those are serious discussions because the entire region, SBCTA, SBCOG, understands, how serious roads are to our entire San Bernardino County region. Certainly the high desert gets, I think, a big brunt of it because we have such severe weather, right? So it kind of is what it is. And we, at some point, we're going to have to, look at what we can do to supplement, I think, so that we have better roads. Everybody wants good roads, right? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you kindly take the vote?
Councilmember Gomez?
Nay.
Councilmember Irving?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman?
Yes.
Mayor Becerra?
Yes.
Motion passes with Councilmember Gomez voting no.
Thank you. We have now taken action to approve staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda. Item 10, award of a construction contract, 7th Street traffic signal modification and Village Drive in Puesta del Sol traffic signal. Mr. Metzler, would you kindly introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. This item particularly advances one of the projects we just spoke to in the last item. But this particular item is focusing on two projects. First, a new signalized intersection at Village and Puesta del Sol. But then also we have 5 intersections along 7th Street that require extensive signal modification. And so with that, this item has been scoped by our engineering department. It's actually been publicly bid and is being brought back for a recommended award. And so the better details, the more technical details of this item are best answered by your city engineer, who is the author on this item, Mr. Freddie Bonilla. He or we are both available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, would you please read the recommendation?
That the Honorable City Council award a construction contract to Elecnor Belco Electric, Inc. in the amount of $3,996,873 for the 7th Street traffic signal modification and Village Drive at Puesta del Sol Drive traffic signal.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to do technical questions from the council member regarding this item. Councilmember Gomez?
Is this item part of what we voted on for item number 9?
This item is to be standing alone, separate as its own item, but it was identified as a part of the amendment in the CIP.
Okay. And then it's my understanding that this item is gonna cost approximately $4 million. And that's probably excluding the other 3 CIP projects that we had just gone over. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Irving?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Harriman?
I have none.
Thank you. Councilmember Jones?
I have none. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And I have none. At this time, I'll invite a motion for this item.
Madam Mayor, I move to adopt staff's recommendation.
Second.
I have a first by Councilmember Jones, a second by Councilmember Harriman. Comments on the pending motion? Councilmember Jones?
None, thank you.
Councilmember Harriman?
Yeah, we talk about how much stuff costs. I want everyone to look at what an intersection of the cost of this, the inflation in construction materials and what have you have just gone through the roof. And I can tell you, I'm paying 3 times for my material at work than I was 6 years ago.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Gomez, any comments?
Not at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Irving?
No, thank you, Mayor.
And I have done. Madam Clerk, will you take the vote?
Councilmember Gomez?
Aye.
Councilmember Irving?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman?
Yes.
Mayor Becerra?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We've now taken action to approve staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda. Item number 11, amendment number 4 to the General Service Provider Standard Agreement with Robert Half International, Inc. for temporary staffing, direct hire, and other employer services project ESC 23-069. Mr. Metzler, would you kindly introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. We continue to rely on professional staffing services to help us to help us operate in the IT department for the city. And the ultimate goal for us is to effectively be able to fill some vacant positions, to be able to get back to running our IT department fully with internal staff. This item is something you're likely familiar with because we did bring a similarly natured item to the council in February, and that was largely to deal with an appropriation to the budget due to, of course, the increase in need for these services to help us get through the cyber threat that impacted all of our operations back in September or October. However, that item didn't fully analyze the staffing, the continued staffing just for our daily operations that are necessary to get us through the fiscal year. And so staff from the IT particularly, your technology officer, Mr. Masarol Islam, has worked closely with our finance office to bring this item forward to create the requisite appropriations to get us through the fiscal year. So with that, the item is authored by Mr. Islam, your technology officer. He or we are available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, would you please read the recommendation?
That the Honorable City Council approve Amendment Number 4 to the General Services Provider Agreement with Robert Half International, Inc., increasing the total compensation by $295,000 to an amount not to exceed $703,000 to continue providing temporary staffing, direct hire, and other professional services, and authorize the city manager to execute any documents relating to this transaction.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to take technical questions from the council members regarding this item. Councilmember Jones?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question. $295,000 is pretty substantial. I mean, what is your opinion as to our getting to a place where we're going to be appropriately staffed in IT? I know it's kind of an issue throughout our region, but where are we?
If I may, Madam Mayor, I think Mr. Islam is prepared to perhaps share with us where we stand from a staffing perspective and what the vision is for the remainder of the fiscal year.
Absolutely. Good evening, Madam Mayor and member of the council. So as of today, I'm happy to share that we only have one vacancy, and coincidentally, that vacancy, the interview is tomorrow. So we have filled all of our vacancies, and two of these staff, one is set to join in April 1st, and the second would be April 8th. And once we go through the interview process and ultimately select a manager, then we will be at fully staffed, which would be 18 FTEs.
All right, so then I guess I need to understand, then what does this $295,000 represent? Is part of this like a corrective, a corrective reporting on the monies needed?
Yeah, and to just elaborate on what Mr. Metzler mentioned, what we're effectively trying to do here is that we have budgeted over the last 2 fiscal years the amount with the Robert Half. What we have not done, which is indicated in the report, is to essentially reflect the cumulative total. And so what we're really doing in this report is to bring both of them at the same level.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Gomez?
No questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Harriman?
I have none.
Councilmember Irving?
Yes, my question was along the lines of Member Jones's question. And so I didn't fully digest what was said. Can you restate that, please? Because you're saying we only have one vacancy?
At the moment, yes, we currently have one vacancy and two of the team members are set to join early April.
And those are full-time employees.
That's correct.
Okay, so can you restate what you said and clarify it and pretend I'm in kindergarten?
I might need help in terms of just reinstating the question, just so that this time I can answer it clearly.
I'm curious about what's before me to vote on if we basically filled all the vacancies.
I think the question that is left to be answered to help Councilmember Irving is the explanation you gave in the correcting entry part of the fiscal impact. So beyond it just being for positions, the either the reconciling or the correcting of the actual budget to justify the appropriation.
That's right. It's really to correct over the last 2 fiscal years, we have made the amendment. This council has approved IT's budget. What we have not done is effectively, when we executed the contract, added the cumulative total. So this contract and this amendment effectively cures that issue.
Okay. I still don't get it, but okay. I understand the need, right? So we'll have to have a private tutorial. Thank you.
Too bad.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Irving. I have none. At this time, I'll invite a motion for this item. I'll move to accept or adopt staff's recommendation.
Second.
Thank you. I have Councilmember Becerra first with Councilmember Jones seconding. At this time, we'll take comments on the pending motion. Councilmember Jones?
None, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Irving?
No comments.
Councilmember Harriman?
None.
Councilmember Gomez?
Yes, as mentioned earlier this year, it was February, to conduct business with a company as Robert Half International that has violated civil rights issues based on race at this time.
Councilmember Gomez.
Would not be something that I would vote for.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. May I state my point?
State your point.
Thank you. So we have a pending motion, and it has to be, the discussion has to be directly related to the motion on the floor, and allegations against anyone has nothing to do with the pending motion.
Yes, ma'am, your point's well taken. Councilmember Gomez, would you like to continue? You're done? Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Gomez?
Nay.
Councilmember Irving? Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman?
Yes.
Mayor Becerra?
Yes.
Motion passes with Councilmember Gomez and Councilmember Irving voting no.
We've now taken action to approve staff recommendation as presented on the agenda. Item 12, consideration of the proposed City Council Resolution 24-020, adopting revisions to the City of Victorville City Council Policy and Procedures Manual. At this time, I will remind all of my council members that to have courtesy to the other council members. Okay? So at this time, Mr. Metzler, would you like to introduce this item?
I would certainly be glad to, but I would actually like for you to turn it over to the city attorney, who's the author on this item.
Okie dokie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. You have before you a red line and clean copy of proposed revisions to the policy manual. Back in November, at the November 7th meeting, city staff was directed to review the policy manual and make some recommendations as to revisions. In response to that, we basically solicited comments from all of the council members as to thoughts or recommendations that they would have with respect to improving the policy manual and making it more efficient and effective as part of basically an annual review. And in response to that, that's what you have before you is a red line copy of the changes as well as a clean copy. You will notice that there are a pretty significant number of changes. However, a lot of them are sort of what I would call cleanup and improving grammatical changes, but there are some that are somewhat significant. I'll highlight three of them. The first of which is we have added a provision that at the request of the mayor or the mayor pro tem, they could request that the city clerk actually help with the holding of the meeting and conduct the meeting to the extent they deem necessary. In addition, another potential revision that was somewhat salient was that we have proposed changing the debate time frame for council members from the current 5 minutes down to 3 minutes to make it consistent with basically public comment time requirements. And one of the third salient comments is to add a social media provision whereby the council would be restricted from commenting on city social media posts. The idea there is that we would like you to basically refrain from dealing with the city's media and any media posts and commenting on them. Instead, you certainly have your own social media that you can make comments on as well, but we wanted to protect basically the city's social media posts. Those are probably the more salient ones. Since there are so many, I have made three possible recommendations for you to consider. One would be, if you're happy with the changes, you could proceed tonight and consider adoption. The second would be to delay adoption of this for 1 or 2 meetings so that we can further refine some of the revisions to the extent you have additional comments. And the third would be possibly to even schedule a workshop to go over the revisions, just given the number of revisions. With that, I turn it over to you for your discretion.
Thank you very much. Mr. Metzler, would you kind of want to introduce anything else with this item?
Nothing further at this time, Madam Mayor.
Okay. I remind all my council members, we are on a 3-minute question time? No. 2.
And would you like me to read the recommendation?
Yes, I would.
Thank you. That the Honorable City Council review and consider approving the proposed revised City Council Policy and Procedure Manual by adopting Resolution number 24-020, or continue the item to a future meeting in order to further review and consider the currently proposed City Council Policy and Procedure Manual revisions, or consider scheduling and holding a workshop to study and provide further review and/or revisions to the City Council Policy and Procedure Manual.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to start with technical questions from the council member regarding this item. Councilmember Gomez.
Thank you, Ms. Becerra. What questions of the modifications were made by the council? Kind of like a percentage. It appears to me that more of it was for one council member versus the entirety of the council. So I'm hoping that someone would answer that.
Actually received comments essentially from 2 of the council members and questions from 2 of the council members, and then staff, the city clerk and myself also made some recommendations and some proposed changes as well.
Thank you. And the word, let me think about the next question. Okay, so if you look at page 408, paragraph 3, it talks about the word incumbent, and it has a couple of things with the incumbent. So I would suggest that instead of having the word having the word may, it should be shall. I don't know why it was more like, if you want to, you can go ahead and do that. That's one thing that I want to know. Why was that not changed to shall and give more permission as in may?
Just getting to that page.
Page 408, paragraph 3, it starts with the word incumbent. It's just from may. I don't understand why there's an option and there's not something more obligatory.
Madam Mayor, may I? I'm a little bit lost as to what chapter we're in and so forth, because I'm not getting the same pagination that.
Are you talking
My
on the
colleagues.
page number of the policy manual, 40?
Well, there's a pagination. I don't know if my time is going, but if it is, I don't want to clarify anything.
What was the page number again?
It's 408 of the actual agenda.
Can we have the chapter and?
No, that's all I have.
That looks like chapter 2,
Chapter 2.
and I'm thinking
A.
the provision in the second to last paragraph in subsection B, sorry, subsection A, the word may, as opposed to shall, consider taking action to remove a council member. Again, I think that makes sense, that it's not a mandatory requirement, that it should be discretionary on the part of the council.
Thank you. And if you go to page 409, under advanced preparation for meetings, it talks about the effects and it talks about permission and denial on section 35512. I just wanted to understand what was the purpose for that.
That's the number you're looking at, has the effect of unexcused absences. Is that the same thing?
Page 403 under advanced preparation for meetings. I'm sorry, I did say 409. You're right, 409.
So is it 409?
Is it 409 or 403? I'm sorry.
409.
Thank you.
409, there are revisions to what is section 5, and it basically deals with the effect of unexcused absences, which is consistent with the government code, which indicates that if there are unexcused absences after a 60-day period, the seat does become vacant.
Thank you. And then for 421 purpose, what was the purpose of section A? 421.
Getting there, 421A. Again, this deals with quasi-judicial public hearings and clarifies the requirements in determining whether or not ex parte communications can be made.
And page 22, without pulling the item, it says before calling the vote, there must be a no. Just what's the purpose for that?
Where are you at, that one?
Page 422, it talks about pulling an item. Before calling of the vote, it should be rendered.
Again, this is a point of clarification as to how no votes should be handled.
Okay, and then it went from 7 minutes to 2 minutes. Is that correct?
Again, what, page 407?
Well, it talks about the agendas going from 5 minutes plus a 2 minute per agenda item. So it was 7 minutes, and then it starts talking about we're now going to only have 2 minutes per agenda item.
Yeah, the revision is to have 2 minutes for questions and then 3 minutes with respect to the debate when a motion is on the floor, which is consistent with the public comment 3-minute limitation and the council member comments at the end of the agenda. We're trying to make it a little more consistent.
Thank you. I have no questions.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Irving?
Yes, I think Mr. DeBornowski addressed my question. You did say that majority of these revisions are from my colleagues. Is that correct?
I would say, yes, a significant number of are from 2 of the colleagues.
Okay. To me, the language, I've said this before, the language is subjective, and I find it to be structurally biased. So, with that being said, I understand that a majority of it was revised by two council persons.
We received comments back from two council persons as well as myself, and the city clerk made revisions as well. And we certainly tried with all due respect to keep it as unbiased as possible, but I respect your interpretation of that.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Harriman?
I have none.
Thank you. Councilmember Jones?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I mean, I have to say, I am good with the changes. There are a number of them that I really like. I like going from the 5-minute comment period to the 3-minute comment period on pending motions. I like the social media, although, actually, let me ask a question on that. On the social media, I just need to make sure what I can and cannot do in terms of the city of Victorville's postings. Can you help us with that?
Certainly, and I was able to actually have a discussion with the city manager regarding this. This was a concern that we had both discussed previously, and I drafted the language based on what some other cities are doing. But it is my understanding in further discussions with the city manager that he is okay with essentially you sharing city posts on your own social media platforms, but is very hesitant to have you make any comments with respect to the actual city social media, basically whatever's out on social media the city puts out. The concern is, again, like if you were to like it or dislike it, that could certainly influence the public as to how they interpret what the council's doing. So my understanding is, Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, but he is fine with you sharing what's on a city media post on your own social media platforms. He just would prefer that we not, and I think it's a great idea that we not comment or allow comments on what the city is putting forward.
That's correct. As to the platforms that we control, no comments, no likes, no reactions, actually helps us as staff manage our messaging without getting into the potential inciting, inflaming, creating of emotions with those that we're communicating with. We do believe there's value in a lot of our posts being shared. Say, for example, if you wanted to share on your personal social sites, that's great. But again, to the extent that they connect back to ours, that's why we would discourage, again, commenting or having the reactions so that it doesn't tie back to our site. But the sharing would be fine. And so altering the language to allow for sharing in that regard would be fine.
So, just to be clear, one of the options that we have is that we could approve the revisions, but we could take out, for example, this portion to have it come back with language that's a little less restrictive than what we're seeing.
You can certainly do that if that is the inclination. It may be easier to give myself and the city clerk another 2 weeks or to the next meeting to make the proposed revisions consistent with the discussions you're having this evening,
Right.
and then bring it back in 2 weeks. I don't see a downside to doing that, given that there are a significant number of revisions. That would be, I think, a little easier to deal with as opposed to sort of directing us, approving it tonight, and making the revisions that you're requesting right now. I certainly
So,
respect the social media.
if there's any revisions that are being suggested here tonight, then just bring the whole thing back in a couple weeks.
I think that would be more beneficial to
Okay.
give all the council members a chance to look at them, make sure that we have done them correctly, consistent with your direction.
Okay. And then the other question I have too, in terms of social media, is not just the city's website, but there are real legal issues that other cities, everywhere in the state of California has to deal with, and that's council members posting on their own sites that has, even if there's like one political comment on it, it becomes a political page, so to speak, and liking, or some other council member then liking or commenting, it gets into real issues in terms of the Brown Act. I'm not saying that should come back in 2 weeks. Maybe that waits until another, look at the policy manual. But in my view, I think that's something needed too. And certainly when we have new council members coming on board. I think that helps with the onboarding process to help them know what the cans and can't do's are.
We could certainly look at that. The concern I would have is that to the extent we're trying to regulate any members' own social media postings, we may be running afoul of some of their own First Amendment rights, for example. So I think a limitation, the only thing we can control is basically what the city's social media says. And I think if you're all in agreement, having a restriction on commenting on the city's social media sites, I think that's appropriate.
Can there be anything in the policy manual that talks about the risks that can ensue from council, not
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, do I still have time? May I ask one other question? Do I still have some time? Okay, Mr. DeBarnowski, the section that talks about, I guess, acquiescing some of the mayor's responsibilities or allowing the city clerk to facilitate or carry out parts or portions of the meeting. Can you give some rationale for that?
Again, there was a suggestion that might be an option to the extent, and maybe that's an area that could be tightened up, because I think there was a hope that under certain circumstances, if a council member who's running, or it actually would be the presiding officers running the meeting, and they needed some sort of assistance in running the meeting, be it for whatever reasons, you give the city clerk that ability to do that. It was a suggestion made by a staff member. We certainly don't need to include it. It's up to you. But it was to give some basically more flexibility to the extent a council member needed some assistance with respect to running a portion of a meeting.
So we have a staff member massaging the council policy manual and changing the role of the mayor?
Just making, again, these are just recommendations. We're not suggesting you adopt it or not adopting it. It was basically an option to have a council member, if they wanted to, seek the assistance of the city clerk to help facilitate running a portion of a meeting. Again, just an option, as a possible suggestion. We're not promoting it one way or the other.
Right, how much of what we see before us has staff gave input to our council policy manual?
Again, the direction on November the 7th was for staff to look at it and propose revisions. That was a revision proposed by staff.
Okay, thank you.
There we go. At this time, I'll invite a motion for this item.
Madam Mayor?
Thank you, Madam.
Oh, I'm sorry. I move that we schedule a workshop to study and provide further review and or revisions to the city council policy and procedures manual, and that we use an outside governance consultant firm that includes some diversity to facilitate the workshop to reduce the conflict that we seem to have on the council, or make sure that we don't have any conflict. And also, I'm concerned about the risk and exposure of persons in the community possibly being exposed to it. So I think we need an outside consultant firm that includes diversity.
Second.
Madam Mayor, I would like to offer a substitute.
Okay, at this time, I am going to ask the city clerk, Madam City Clerk, can you help me with what goes first, what goes second there?
Sure. So you're going to allow her substitute motion on the main motion?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So my substitute is that we adopt staff's recommendation number 1, excluding the request to allow city clerk to run the meeting, which I would recommend would come back to the council in a couple weeks with tighter language as to when, if at all, deferring to the city clerk would be required, and also that the language on the social media section be tightened up.
Madam Mayor, if I might, just a word of caution. There are 3 recommendations on there, and to the extent, whichever motion you decide to take, if you take a vote on it, and it was to fail, that would basically end the discussion on the item unless there's another substitute motion. So.
Here you go. Okay,
I'd like to make a substitute motion.
stand by.
Sorry.
Go ahead. And this is, yes, me asking our city clerk. So we have the main motion, a substitute motion with no second, so that motion dies.
We haven't
asked for a second.
haven't asked for a second on the substitute
Okay.
motion.
Second on the substitute motion. No second, that motion dies. Now, Councilmember Harriman, Your substitute motion on the main motion.
I move to continue this item to a future meeting.
Do I have a second on that motion? No second. That motion dies. Now we go back to the main motion. Madam, you take the roll, right?
No, you need a second on the main motion.
I already second that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so now you need a vote.
Okay.
Do you want discussion on that pending motion?
Well, on the main motion.
Yes.
We're going to begin with the maker of the motion. On the pending motion, Councilmember Irving.
I've already stated my position. I think that we should use an outside governance consultant firm to reduce the risk of conflict among my colleagues, also to help us understand exactly, like I've said before, I find this language to be structurally biased and subjective. Let's work through this, because for me to suggest that we change the role of the mayor and that we have staff massaging our council policy and procedures manual, that's a bit much. That's, to me, stepping beyond. I don't know who did it, and I'm not criticizing the person, but to have that kind of practice, that's beyond the scope. I have a problem with that. So I think that we should use an outside governance consulting team, one that's diverse, to help us facilitate and go through this and review it so we understand the revisions. I don't have any other comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gomez.
No comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Harriman.
No comments.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So, I mean, I understand what my colleague is saying. I mean, I had some challenges too, which is that I think I understand the intent of the request to allow the city clerk. I just have a basic problem with and our clerk, by the way, is a policy nerd, just like I am. She's amazing. But just from a strict policy perspective, I think it's problematic to have a staff member potentially run a portion of a meeting or an entire meeting, according to this language, in lieu of an elected official. That's the job that we're elected to do and must be prepared to fulfill. Secondly, and that's why I in my substitute, I requested that come back, just to kind of tighten it up as to what conditions that it might apply if someone volunteered to relinquish that role temporarily. And then I mean, honestly, and the social media I think is pretty common. I think our city attorney and city manager think that that's a given. But in terms of the rest of it, the language is really basic policy 101. And so I'm going to just ask a question. I know that this is a comment period, but I think it's a significant enough question that I hope Madam Mayor will allow it. But Mr. DeBortnowski, you would absolutely have to tell us if something's being recommended that was structurally biased, would you not?
I would have to do that as part of my role. And you know, we were the ones that generated the original policy manual to date. So it basically it was a staff-driven document to start with. And we've done the revisions ever since. I have no problem if we want to bring in consultants to look at it as well. I have no problem with that.
Well, I would, in the sense that I think it's unnecessary monies when we can be spending funds on much more important things. This is just basic policy revision 101. It's all straightforward and pretty basic to me. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. DeBornowski, not going over what you said, but I think it was me that brought it up to have the city clerk, due to the fact that I asked her to help me out during certain parts of the meeting. So it wasn't that I know of, it was about on that side. I just felt more comfortable with asking, as I did when we started with the motions and everything.
I apologize. I think you're right. I think you made the original suggestion. The city clerk and I worked on the language to try and document basically what you had suggested. My apologies.
We also had an area where our new mayor pro tem probably could have used her help a little bit more when we, so.
I think that was the motivation originally.
Yes.
Add that language.
Yes, Councilmember Irving, on that one, I'm going to take responsibility for that one out here in public. I asked for,
Well,
because of her
I appreciate that. I'm looking for it because earlier when I read through this, I saw that one of the revisions struck a government code. And to me, the policy manual rests on government code, in my opinion.
Okay.
So I'm looking for it right now, but nevertheless, I appreciate you. And I don't want to belabor the point. I've already stated my position and I got you.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions. Madam Clerk, will you kindly take the vote?
Councilmember Gomez,
Aye.
Councilmember Irving,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
No.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes with Councilmember Councilmember Jones and Mayor Pro Tem Harriman voting no.
We've now taken action to approve points 3 of staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda with the added of,
Yes, a review by consultants to ensure there's no biases within that document.
thank you very much. Item 13, city manager reports. Mr. Metzler, back to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Just a few items, and I'll follow it up with a email to you of these points. On the environmental side of the house, environmental program side of the house, we're still recruiting volunteers for our community cleanup day, which will be held Saturdays, April 20th. Registration is available on the city's website, and the deadline to register is April 5th. On the community services side of the house, the city's annual spring festival will be held on Saturday, March 30th. Again, at Hook Park between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Be an opportunity to come out and enjoy the several free games and activities, or even participate in the egg hunt for a small fee of $5. To register for that event, we have registration being handled at the Hook Community Center. On the code enforcement and animal control side of the house, Animal Care and Control will be hosting a low cost shot clinic here at City Hall this Saturday from the hours of 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Also be an opportunity to join us at the Spring Festival at Hook Park on Saturday, March 30th for our Spring Extravaganza pet adoption event. And so more information you can contact our Animal Care and Control office. Extravaganza. They did it to me again. I love it. Thank you. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
At this time, we're going to go to item 14, discussing impossible action regarding the upcoming agenda items. As a presiding officer, I'm going to take it for one time that I will start. I motion, in light of the passing of our beloved former city engineer, Brian Gangler, I would like to request an item be agendized for discussion and possible action at the next regular city council meeting to rename the Green Tree Bridge to the Brian Gangler Overpass. I'm going to move it. I'm looking for a second.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Madam Clerk, could you kindly take the roll?
Point of clarification, this is a motion for discussion, or this is a motion to immediately do a renaming of the GTE bridge?
Discussion and possible action at the next council meeting to talk about renaming the bridge.
Thank you. Aye.
Councilmember Irving,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. I'm then going to move to Councilmember Jones.
No request. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Irving.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gomez.
Not at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Harriman.
Yeah, I think with all the awards we've been getting, maybe we could talk about putting a nice trophy, something in the lobby to show off all our awards.
Mr. Metzler, you want to hop in there? Is that a motion or do we already, I thought we have one, don't we?
I don't think we have one out there. But certainly if the council wants to agendize it, we can follow that direction, or I like the idea. It's certainly something I can
So we'll take that motion. I'll second that.
on my own.
Madam Mayor, may I ask for clarification what the motion actually is?
Sure, go ahead. Mr. Harriman?
To put a display in the lobby showing all the awards that the engineering department, building department, all the awards that we receive in show them off and people come in and out of the city hall and they can see all the good work the city employees are doing.
So am I to understand that that's a motion to have this appear on our soonest agenda to discuss and take possible action to do all of that?
Yes,
Thank you.
you say it better.
I'll second it.
We actually already had a second, so we have a first and a second.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Madam Clerk, please.
Councilmember Gomez,
Aye.
Councilmember Irving,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to take reports from council members on various boards that they sit on. We're going to start with Councilmember Harriman.
I have none.
Thank you. Councilmember Jones?
Yeah, just briefly attended SBCTA meeting, SBCTA General Policy Committee meeting, SBCTA Mountain Desert Policy Committee meeting. And of course, we all attended the State of the City last, has it been, oh no, it's been 2 weeks now, almost 2 weeks now, on the great things that's happening in our city. So I think it's a great thing to look at it on our website. And Madam Mayor, may I deviate just a little bit to offer a couple congratulations?
Sure.
All right, thank you. So congratulations to Captain Wickham in your promotion, and good for them. Sorry for us, right? But we know that you'll do great things, and you're still going to be in our county and do great things for all of us. Congratulations to our new chief, Randy, who's going to do an amazing job, I'm sure. He comes with kudos all the way around, so looking forward to working with him. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for your patience.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Irving?
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gomez?
Yes, mine are typical in nature because I get to deal with assembly members, working with them closely into several issues that we have occurring in the city of Victorville. I don't need to say any more. It's typical for me to bring these offers in terms of the closeness and collaboration with a couple of assembly members currently, and then of course attending various institutions for educational interest and helping my community in the city of Victorville. Thank you.
I have none. At this time, we are going to adjourn. I would like to adjourn tonight's meeting in memory of Brian Gangler. The time is 8:31. Meeting's adjourned.